Chickenomics sucks. That's one of the things that we've learned in the first few years of farming. It's really, really expensive to raise meat chickens, uh, especially when you feed them organic feed, because organic feed is expensive. It's actually gone down a bit this year, so hopefully our cost per pound will go down. But all winter, we were working on ways or trying to figure out ways to do the same amount of work for the same period of time and get more chickens out of it.
Don't be denied, don't be denied. And let those stars in your eyes shine. We all soar to different heights. So mend those wounded wings and fly. Mend those wounded wings and fly. We all see the world through different eyes. Some choose the road, some choose the skies. High above the world, show who you are. From way down here, you're a shooting star. From way down here, you're a shooting star.
The key limiting factor for us was their mobile shelter. Even with the electric fence that they're in, still don't feel super comfortable with the amount of predators around. Just sort of having them be under, a shelter with no sides or no hardware cloth mesh to keep raccoon hands out and mink out and those sorts of things. And we had already spent a bunch of time and money building a Suscovich style chicken tractor, which is this is basically the chassis of at the bottom, sort of a 2 foot high by 6 foot by 10 foot frame, and then it used to have a an arch over top just made out of electrical conduit, and then there'd be a tarp over the top of it so that way you could go inside and feed. We found that even with moving it 3 times a day, by the time the birds are these ones are about 6 weeks now, by the time they reach this point, it's just so poopy and gross, no matter how much you move them. So this year did a little bit of minor surgery on the shelter itself, just chopping one of the sides off here with a chop saw and making it so that the side can flip up. Gives them a little bit, makes the shelter a little bit wider by day, gives them a little bit more shade and shelter from the rain and that sort of stuff. And then basically let them free range inside this electric poultry net. We got one of the super long ones. Doesn't need to be really high because meat birds can't fly. And by the time this time next week, before they go into the knackers, they'll probably barely be able to walk. The other thing is a mobile feed shelter. So whatever, if some little critters are going to get in here, come underneath or through the fence and eat a little bit of corn, it's not so bad. But this forces them to get up and out of the shelter, makes it a lot easier to move the birds, especially in the morning, because they all get up, they run out to get food and water, and they aren't inside the shelter, so we can just close the lid, move the shelter, get them off of their night manure. And so this external feeder is great at, like, it's not perfect, but it's a lot better because now instead of just 60 square feet inside the shelter, which at an appropriate stocking density, maybe you could have 30 birds in there, and that's still kind of pushing it just with the manure load. Now we've got almost 900 square feet of free ranging paradise for these birds, so they can go out, they can hunt bugs, they can eat grass. They don't do a lot. Like, they still just sort of lay around like this most of the day, but they are pretty active first thing in the morning when they are let out of their shelter, and they're pretty active in the evening, as all chickens are. And evening time, they'll run around, they'll forage, they'll act like real chickens, and live the good life for the short time that they're here. Now their manure load is spread out so much more, it means we don't have to move them nearly as much. So instead of 3 full moves a day, we only have to move it a move and a half. We've been monitoring it by what the manure load is, but really we just make a half move to get them off of their night manure. They sleep in just one end of the chicken tractor, and that gets a real dense amount of manure. So we move them off of that in the morning, and then right before or in the evening before they go up for the night, we give it a full move to get it on fresh grass. So they've got a new place to cake up with manure. The new system's been working out great, and you can see the impact on the pasture. We mow paths to keep the fences from grounding out, but in between the paths, the chickens have knocked pretty much all the grass down. There's just a few goldenrods and asters and things like that still popping up, which if it was earlier in the season, we'd come in and scythe, but we'll just let the winter knock them down. But pretty good manure load and real good disturbance on pasture. And even spots like this where the grass was thinner, they did a real number, scratching things up just like chickens should. Just out doing a third and final harvest on these elderberries. And these ones are already a little bit picked over, so I'm going to leave them for the birds. This plant here is planted right in the middle of our orchard setting. So there's a cherry tree next to it. There's our field crop area there. There's the rest of the orchard running around there. There's another row of trees. That's our third harvest. Pretty good. Already made some syrup. This elderberry just got cleaned out by the birds. And my only theory is that because this is sort of the wild edge here, and it's planted along the outer edge facing nature, the birds are a little bit more courageous to come after this one and feed on it than they are on the other one, which is in a little bit more human impacted area. It's just a crazy observation of the impact of we humans on bird feeding habits. So another thing that's been super useful is cover cropping in pots. So we have this rosemary here that's cover cropped with a white clover. And the super useful thing about that is the white clover needs more water than the rosemary does. So whenever the white clover gets droopy, give it a little watering. And it's like the canary in the coal mine for the rosemary. We heat primarily with wood. We do have an electrical backup, but we don't burn a lot of it. Our house is passive solar, really well insulated. So we probably burn 2.5-ish bush cord a year. And that includes what goes into the pizza oven. So we split it by hand. We like the exercise. We like being out in nature. Come and hang out with the dog. Fall weather's beautiful, great time to be in the woodlot. It's like each log sitting on the chopping block is a puzzle that's waiting for me to solve it. And I just need to find the seam and swing my maul well to be able to solve that puzzle. I find it gives me a lot of focus and feeling of connectedness to the moment that it's very easy to lose track of in the day-to-day grind of working and farming and parenting and all the other things that there are to do in this life. And to come out here and to just have this one thing and be exactly where I am, doing exactly what I'm doing, with nothing better to do, nothing more important to do, nothing else on my mind except solving the puzzle and focusing on solving the puzzle of each individual round and focusing on the next swing of the splitting maul and making slow but steady progress throughout the day. It's a great feeling. By burning wood and the trees that we take for wood, we're actually doing our woodlot a favor because we're only burning dead and dying trees. There are a lot of pests in this part of the world, a lot of invasive tree pests. So this is an old beech tree that died from beech bark disease, which is like a fungal disease, kills the tree from the outside in. So even after the tree's dead, the center of it is still is still pretty solid, but this is right near our walking path, and we don't want it just to fall over on its own, because who knows when that might come down on us or kids playing in the woods or on the dog or something like that. So we chop it down, we burn it in the wood stove, so that way it's not sitting on the forest floor as fuel for fire. We chop up the branches, we scatter them around, let them return to the earth, and in places where we've found edible mushrooms, we'll take a suitable species, and when we have a broken chunk like this that snaps when the tree hits the ground or something, it'd be a real pain in the butt to chop up and put in the wood stove. So I'll just take that and I'll pile it on top of the logs where the edible mushrooms are already living, and hopefully the mushrooms will grow up into that log and use it as a new food source so we can keep finding mushrooms there. Those white spots on the outside of the bark indicate that the fungus is present in the beech tree, and it's eventually going to die. Probably, I guess. But instead of proactively taking them down, like people did with American elm and the American chestnut when they faced some pretty devastating pressures of their own blights or diseases, everybody went out and cut them down, and that made it a whole lot less likely that we'd be able to find trees that are naturally resistant to the disease. So we leave them standing in hopes that some of them will just keep fighting it off. And then those trees will grow to maturity, and they'll drop their nuts, beech nuts, on the ground, and little baby trees grow up that will have a little bit more of that, will hopefully have a little bit more of the resistance. And maybe in a couple thousand years, beech bark disease won't be a thing. So, wait a second, you guys are telling me that you don't like your new paddock over here? Why are you all out? How? I don't understand what's going on.